more Vanguard versus Infernal. I'm familiar with Jardozer, a very talented Infernal player. Could you maybe give us a little bit more info on our north side friend here, though?
Yeah, absolutely. Primescout is, I want to say he's Korean, based on the events that he's run. I'm not actually totally sure about this one, but very good Vanguard player. I haven't seen a lot of him in this patch, so I can't tell you exactly how he's playing, but he's run some tournaments. He's very involved in the Stormgate scene, and I'm excited to see what he's going to have in store for us, especially in this setup where we've seen, it's funny, everyone's been talking, it's not 1-to-1. Let me fix my...
We'll get 1-to-1. I think
we
this
will.
is going to be close. You know?
Yeah.
I can sense it. I think the map pools are, like, at the moment feel quite good for, like, Infernal Vanguard going a bit longer. Like, we've got some of those fatter, wider maps that play well for eye. But for now, we are going to have the just balanced opening, right? The Brute plus the Gaunts, pretty atypical at the moment. Only Lance spam on the other side. I'm wondering if there's a type of game where maybe we see a one base into Biokinetics rush, and it is going to be exactly that from Primescout.
Look at this man. He knows the game. What I want to talk about, though, maybe because I play Infernals and I think it's interesting, is that we are not seeing that one vault into one shrine into a later conclave that we saw out of Larimbo, that greedier opening. Instead, he's getting shrine, getting conclave, getting that more powerful army on the map early, and then delaying his expo a little bit, which, fair, right? The creeps are worth a lot. But one thing you've been hitting on quite a lot, and I think it's worth talking about here, is that shrines take forever to build. You can power build an expo, you can power build a command post for the Vanguard, and it's fine. You actually get it up very quickly. So the faster you get a shrine up earlier on, the more it will pay off. And for now, though, again, you have Brutes, you have Gaunts, but realistically here, Killer Pigeon, with this, what I would assume to be a kinetic redirection spam, Lancer spam, these Gaunts don't really give you a lot of value. For now they do, but pretty soon they might even just be a liability.
Yeah, and also it's kind of a liability when he's doing this, right? He has to go for the Brute split just to get the Fiend chase down to try and snipe the low HP ones here, but it just means you've got less of the thing that actually keeps Lancers back from a counter dive the other way. The good news is you're not really going to get kinetic redirection that quick, takes a while. Instead, it is going to be an Exo switch up, which is just as troublesome for Jardozer here, considering just how outranged and outgunned those Gaunts easily become.
That being said, Fiends can get on top of them. Very nice target fire there on the Infest Skull. But that being said, Fiends can get on top of these Exos. That can be a little bit scary. I am a little surprised that we're not seeing upgrades getting started here. And I guess he doesn't quite have the money for it just yet. You'd just rather get Exos out. But the difference between a quick draw hustle Exo and a standard Exo, the difference between a kinetically redirected Lancer and a normal Lancer is just about night and day. There's a reason why the early game is seen as rather Infernal favored, and then the mid game becomes a little bit more Vanguard favored. And we talked about economic scaling at length, but also the other thing is getting these upgrades on the bio turns them from, they're kind of okay, they can do enough, to, wow, these are really strong.
Yeah, I think it's the difference in target, right? Like, if you're going for these camps, I think it's better to just get mass. If you're going for the fights, those abilities can be the difference, right? Because you don't really need quick draw hustle when you're up against a camp. It's not going to move too much. So it just feels like Primescout's focus right now is play PvE a little bit longer, delay the PvP, because as we know, as long as there's some Gaunts and Brutes, this comp scales very healthily for the Vanguard player.
That it does. Now, again, you are only on one base, and we talked about getting up to 2 bases, getting up to all these things. Primescout is still a 1-base Vanguard. We're not seeing a bunch of mobs being pulled down to the natural, and you can make up for some of this with creep camps. Absolutely, especially as they are worth so much more money than they used to. But there are 4 creep camps left on the map. They're pretty far away from the action. They're not exactly where you tend to want to play, so that influx of money that you can find, that influx of Luminite that you can get from taking these camps is not really there anymore.
No.
And I'm looking at this army coming out of Jardozer with all these Gaunts and Brutes, and again, this is a quick draw hustle attack. This is not a timing coming out of kinetic redirect. These Lancers are just there to tank. They're not there to get on top of the Gaunts. I'm not sure that I believe in this attack.
It's also, to the whole point of those camps on the far side, like, it's also just awkward when you play one base to chop through, right? It's a big chunk of your economy that's just not going to be working for a very long time if you idle out. And while when you're playing, I'd say, as Infernals, you can get a bit more value. The old Shroudstone build comes to mind. Sending a Bob out there just feels really painful. So it does mean that you're leaving a lot of resources on the map unacquirable. And also, because of the way you get movement speed buffs on Lancers and Exos, it is a comp that is actively designed and rewarded for brawling, not so much for hunting PvE.
Yeah, you know, you still trigger your passives on the creep, so it's not that bad. Yep. But even still, with this quick draw hustle, one base, it is poking. It is going to knock down a lot of these brutes. We had one Shroud Stone, but it's going to go down. And now there's the Manifest, which makes life a lot more difficult because we have Plague Axes available. There is Infest on all the Bouncing Bone Axes that are on this gone army. So yeah, they're not fast. They don't have Reaper Rush. I don't know that we have. Do we have tier 2? We do have a Greater Shrine, and I assume it is researching only just, and it's going to be 90 seconds before it completes. Yeah. But this super powered Shroud Stone just sitting here poking away the Exos, well, I guess the Lancers are still kind of here, but getting through this just feels really hard.
It has finished its empowered stage, right? So you're gonna get less Shroud in the area, you get more easily poked here. But yeah, I gotta agree, it feels like this is now just a switch from Primescout. Like, he hasn't got any extra troops kind of hustling across the map, and the switch is now on the way at home. You see medtechs arriving, so he understands he's gonna need a little bit more padding onto his bio here, a little bit more health. And this is going to force a reaction. Now, typically the one that we like to see here, if you're an Infernal player, Magmadons can feel really good against the medtechs because they're heavy class and they tend to be the last thing to get out. Whereas Exos, obviously, they always just care about themselves. They're the selfish mother duckers, right? They shoot a unit and then run away and leave the healer to frontline for them.
Yeah, and it's especially important to point out, you talk about them having a heavy armor type. It's funny, you look at Magmadons, you look at that trample, and you say, oh, this is really good at squishing light units. And it kind of can be, sure. But they made a change last patch, or last build, back in the Frigate build, the last thing we had before early access, where instead of it being, I think it was just flat damage, they put a lot of the damage of the trample into versus heavy, instead of versus light versus anything else. So Magmadons are actually fairly good against heavy units, and they're still reasonable against light units, but it's not just this, they stomp across and all the Gaunts, all the Exos, they just get squished. So it's a blessing and a curse, but it does mean, you're right, against these medtechs, against Vulcans later on, they can be pretty dang strong. As we see the Skull harass, but let's be real here. Now that it's down to 25 HP, it's scouting. That's all it is.
Yeah, and it's like, it's free info. I think this is one thing that's underrated, is keeping your Hexen alive this long. Is like, we've seen a lot of games where people just throw their Hexen away in one of the early skirmishes, and then they never think to rebuild, and they're just not getting free info. Like, yeah, you can send it Fiends, but Fiends are a permanent value point. They can always survive. You want to throw them towards something that they can kill, not throw them in to just die to get a little bit of info. So, yeah, it's just free unit, free info, right? And I think he did, I don't think he saw the med techs when he was coming in. He must have seen them maybe in the mid-map already, or at least he anticipates them.
Yeah, I think it's one of those, it's just one of those things where it makes sense to get a couple Magmadons in the mid-game. Now, once we get this Bio Ball to late game, you're pretty much only beating it with a Magmadon flank. Use something to disrupt the line to prevent the infinite kite, or if you can go kind of trap him in a corner, and that also works fairly well. You kind of use the map against him. So you want to get a couple Magmadons. They are fairly useful, especially now as they take less damage just a little bit from the Exos. Because again, Exos have bonus damage versus heavy. Magmadons, they do get shredded by that target fire. But again, I do think you want to add Miasma. I do think you want to go and get a couple more Hexens. I think that is the way you want to play. But for now, again, you get the Magmadons. They're a good answer to the majority of things that Vanguard player has at this stage. And now, Jardozer is opening the Secluded Grove, but is this opening it just to make sure that if his opponent takes it, he can counter? Or is he going to actually try to take this base?
Kind of like the idea of potentially getting towards like Hellborns. I think Hellborns playing in that center area is kind of underrated while you wrap your army around the sides. So maybe you see some sort of switch up there. It looks like we have got the imp moving in though. So it's going to be Yoink at the center. But Primescout, I mean, he should have a sense that something's not right here. In fact, we've got hangar bays now being dropped in. The question mark I have, are we just going to see more of the big carrier boys here like we saw last series?
Yeah, high command's just about done. Double carrier, double. And by the way, Primescout's doing this a little bit better than Albino did. Again, all respect to Albino, but he had one solar habitat on one of the hangar bays and the other one was not boosted. This is double solar habitat. And of course, what solar habitat does, actually we can mouse over this, it increases attack speed, production speed. It makes things work faster in the context of a hangar bay. You build things faster. That being said, if you're transitioning here, if you're transitioning into mass helicarrier, being on the map right now is not what you want to do. Maybe you think you can make a trade, but so much of your timing, so much of everything you're building towards is this next level of tech. So this, sure, it might work out for him pretty well as we see the bounces go down, the tramples go down. But there's also a world where he loses enough of this army where the helicarrier transition just doesn't work.
Well, looks like the Lancers do back away long enough here. The Magmadon's going to be turned on. The Gaunt Wave coming in now, but not much of front line left over. The Focus Fire comes in. The Magmadon, the Medtech heals are good enough, so he does manage to bait a fight that Jardozer cannot win. And now with this switch up on the way, we have got 3 Helicarriers queued up in a situation where Jardozer needs to spam a hell a lot more of these tier 1 units.
That he does. Now, Magmadons are starting to come to the frame, but this is where we can see the issue of a single Magmadon, not really from a flank. Exos just target him down in the extreme. And again, this is kind of what I'm talking about a little bit, where you add, if there's more Hexens with, again, maybe he doesn't have timing for Miasma, but if you add that in, oh, this flank might be really good. No, it's not close enough. You just target it down.
Yeah.
You need to have a Harbinger. You need to have something like that. Is now Quick Draw Hustle tier, not Quick Draw Hustle, whatever it's called, Survival Protocol tier 3. Even as these Exos die, they don't truly die. Now, if they're infested, they'll die immediately after the fact, but even getting one more shot that's a lot more damage. Jardozer, though, he will survive. He does have this middle base up and running, not mining from it for a ton at the moment, but that scary opportunity where the Lancers were at the front, the Exos were behind, it's gone. But here come those Helicarriers, 3 on the map, getting those bombers ready to go. This is a much better tempo timing.
Yeah, I think Primescout knows as well. Like, you walk past there while the tree is missing. You have big question marks there. So wouldn't be surprised if we see him just press towards there, knowing Jardozer will have to defend it. Looks like he might just try to commit onto the third base, which would make sense. That one's going to be saturated. It's like a bomber run there could probably just wipe out all the imps here.
Yeah, you do want to wait to get all your full complement of bombers before setting that run. Otherwise, it's not nearly as impressive. So we're getting there pretty soon. 2 of these Helicarriers are just about to have the full complement. The third one a little bit further away. But also, it is, again, it's a little bit awkward, right? If you deal with this, there's no way for the main army to fight until right now, as the Bobs are going to try to chase this down. But do we have... Okay, so we do have a Twilight Spire. There is room for Shadow Flyers to join the fray. Jardozer really lacking in Animus. Does that mean he got a dragon?
Does he know? Oh, if he didn't, he's about to find out about his Helicarriers. Bomber runs are coming through. Not the best of connections here, but it was only 1. He's still got the other 2 ready to surge. And he's fishing. I like this approach compared to the last game where it was, 1 pump and done. He's more just kind of layering them out to kind of use them to scout and see what the follow-up shot might be.
Yeah, going and chaining your shots instead of hitting with the big alpha strike makes a lot of sense here. And so Sentry Post goes up. We talked about this last time. He's to get a repair turret. It's great. Theoretically, if it works out. But okay, so Shadow Flyers are now on the field. There's a lot of them that the Jardozer is now spent for. And again, the value from them, it's not like they do a lot of damage. We actually can't see how much damage. I can't mouse over how much damage they do. But more importantly, their attack reduces armor. And Helicarriers have 20 armor. It's so impactful. Now the bomber runs are going to go down on top of everything. That one's juicy. And yes, some of these Helicarriers are starting to get a little bit low, but there they go. Mass repair, nanoswarms on top of everything. And I mean, actually, I guess maybe not nanoswarms, but yeah, the bombing runs were too strong. Jardozer, he took too much. He took too much damage from the initial poke. Not enough.
Oh, that was so close. 2 HP on one of the Helicarriers. Another one down to about 36. Comes in clutch, then repair man. The funniest part is he actually healed the full HP one first, or like 90% one. But what a sick read there. Just kind of baits him around his own base, forces this funnel choke point with all these low HP units, right, like the Gaunts, and wipes them on a delay. And now Primescout in a dominant position, but also a position where even if he fought without the Helicarriers, he'd be able to break the space now.
Yeah, the big issue really was he took that fight a minute, like 5 minutes ago, where he lost enough of his stuff. Jeez, those bombing runs. Yeah, this is it. I mean, even with having Hellborn with the, what's it called? The Molten Touch to add additional DPS on top, doesn't really matter. The damage is too strong. Jardozer was put too far behind in tempo from that attack from Primescout in the mid game, and that meant that there was no transition ready. His army was not big enough for Helicarriers to do more than enough here. And that's a 1-0 lead for our Vanguard player. Well, that's what happens. You win a game in a best of 3, and that you already are on match point. By the way, apparently Liquipedia has the finals listed as a best of 4 instead of a best of 5, which is
What?
I don't know how that works.
Handshakes, and you're like, okay, split the prize pool. Good being here, mate.
There we go. It's funny. There are rules in Atticos tanks for the Swiss stage, right, which are best of 1s. You play 5 rounds of best of 1s, where there are rules for ties. There is no tie logic in Stormgate yet. Like, you cannot tie the game. It is impossible. I guess if both players
had that
agree.
As a tournament in person, and you just like, yeah, you're on the podium, they're just sharing the first place stand.
I mean, you can agree to tie. You can say this is a draw. No one wants to win. Like, no one can really win this easily. But otherwise, yeah, there is no logic in the game for a tie, but we have it in the rule set anyways, because one day, one glorious day.
Just in case. Because like that has happened, right? You get stalemates in StarCraft, right?
Oh, yeah.
I don't think there's ever been a rule for that in the Age of Empires scene. So like in Age of Empires 4, because you have infinite resources of certain types, right? Like it can always eventually end. And I'm sure you're familiar with the infamous Age of Empires 2 game that went, I think it was 146 hours or something like that.
146 hours.
I think it went up to 146. Like when I checked on it originally, it's like 96, and then it kept going. Basically, like they would go and sleep. They'd set up in such a way that neither player could kill the other, and they'd just come back and pretty much just stand there for another 12 hours.
Was this a professional game, or was this like something on ladder?
This was a ladder game. That's the dumbest part. It was a ladder game.
I love that. By the way, we should point out this is a bit of a different opening from Jardozer in Game 2 compared to Game 1. This is double Vault into Shrine instead of Vault Conclave into Shrine. So that means you get more Brutes, a little bit more Beef, maybe some more Fiends if you want to go for that one. It means you can take creep camps a little bit easier as well. And also, you're more robust against, say, a bunch of Lancers. Gaunts.
Yeah, but it's not Lancers, though. Like, check this. Like, last game, it was, what, 5 or 6 Lancers, I feel like? He scaled a bit more, I feel. This is a very rapid switch into Exos, much quicker than Game 1 when we watched Primescout do this.
Yeah, you know, the other way to take a look at this is, well, you got a bunch of Brutes, but that also means you have a bunch of Fiends. And if you can use the Brutes to kind of chunk through the Lancers, which again is an ask, but if you can use the Brutes to chunk through the Fiends and then split all your Brutes and just immediately surround all the Exos with, what, 20 Fiends or something, that it can be a really solid answer to Snowball. Now, is that going to happen in this game? I don't know. Brutes or Lancers are very strong. They're very beefy. But that is maybe a condition to go try to make this happen.
Speed camp is a problem here, though. The Exo didn't clip onto it. It's only the Lance with the movement speed, and that's not really the thing that needs to break away. It's the thing you want to front line with more so. So Exo just trying to hold the choke point. Nice use of the heal camp here. Able to absorb all the damage. Brutes are reaching around the back. The Fiend Split is going to come in again, but so far Micro is on point, right? Like no losses here. Primescout is holding this back in a beautiful way.
Yeah, and now we're starting to see the promotions as well. So these units, not only are they staying alive in the healing zone, they're getting more damage. They're adding more HP as this Exo still stays alive. Jardozer committed to the double vault, and yes, he does have a natural down, but this was so much commitment. He got nothing for it.
And that's sick, because like when we were talking about, yeah, you can kind of just go past with the Fiends and kill the Exos. I was going to say what I wanted to see from Primescout is just hug walls, right? Like just play along the edges more so than the open, so you never get pinched and surrounded by Fiends. It's essentially what he done there, right? He used the trees behind him. Their health is obviously the key detail there, just healing throughout that entire fight. And all of a sudden a game where like Jardozer, you're like, oh man, he looked like he had an overwhelming lead. You might be deceived into thinking he still does when he's second base like this, but we've been talking quite a bit today about the rapid pacing on a second base setup for the Vanguard. We're now seeing that. Primescout moves out for his natural. Sure, Jardozer is already online, but with the quality of the armies, you need to be ahead on economy here.
Yeah, man, I wish we had a resources lost thing that I could hit. I'm so used to observing StarCraft.
There's so many things.
We're not there yet, obviously, but I'm like, the resources lost numbers would be insanely in favor of Primescout right now. Just the efficiency is to this crazy extent.
I'm trying to think if he lost anything, right? Like
he
maybe
lost the Lancer. I think he might have lost one Exo, one Lancer,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the Exos were fine though, and now with this count, this Shroudstone's not going to be able to hold for him.
Well, he can't get on top of it.
Okay. Lancer, nice micro away. The fully injured one down to just 7 HP, able to break off of this. So send him home. Just a beautiful min-max micro from Primescout here to not lose anything.
Yeah, oh, there we go. Mass promote on top of all these Exos as well. Give him a little heal, a little more damage, everything like that. Really committing this. Now, again, the downside, we saw how good Albino's pressure was on Broken Crown in game 1 of that series. Because, in part, there's a healing camp that you can just go retreat to right there. This time, you don't really have that. You can go back to a speed camp. You do have this passive healing from the healing camp, and there's one Lancer, I guess, was sent all the way back home, but it's not this immediate just ebb and flow of pressure. That being said, Shroudstone's dead, and this is just continuing to just chunk away at the units.
This is just so elegant the way Primescout's doing this. Like, he only ever needs one Lancer to feel confident. He forces the Shroudstone commitment here, so Emergence comes out. Sure, that's going to defend you. It's really important he keeps the Shroudstone up here, because you mentioned that health camp. It's only accessible if there's not a static defense in the way. So that's kind of his lifeline here to not exchanging that heal on the offensive side. But Primescout just got so much out of this, right? Like, you have to remember, he was scaling a second base behind this. He was adding in more exos. He's in a very comfortable position. It's now Jardozer that needs a transition.
Yeah, and I think the other really important thing to point out here is this is all about, as the Vanguard player, it's all about timing. It's all about extending your timing. Because if Jardozer's able to go and build up to 3 bases and have this, like, a 7 to 10 minute window where he's on tier 2 and he's got Magmadons and just a metric ton of Gaunts with Reaper Rush, with Plague Axes, all these things, and the Vanguard player has not been able to keep him down, has not been able to go and kind of expand his economy at a similar rate, the Infernal just kind of runs over. We've seen that happen a couple times, but because Primescout has traded so well and kept his opponent down so hard, and granted, part of that was Jardozer going double vault and not getting anything out of it, because of that, now that means this timing into the mid game is so much better for Primescout. Yeah, again, no kinetic redirect, not just yet. He only has quick draw. Actually, does he have quick draw hustle? Yeah, he does. So he's got that.
But he has med techs coming, which is the bigger deal, right? So like you can actually just kind of pseudo frontline with exos with good micro. Like I actually think, yeah, kinetic redirection isn't really that quintessential now. It's kind of quite crazy. Like usually you'd think, you know, when you're seeing any sort of early game against Infernals, kinetic redirection just scales really nicely. But realistically, he's up against a bunch of brutes, right? So just actually the best way to win these fights is not letting anything get hit by the enemy. Exos does that. And what timing as well. The run by finds the third being built up. That's going to be a cancel and delete of him. It's a good map control here. And Jardozer, he can just snowball this into more camps if he chooses.
Yeah, I understand why Jardozer wanted to take that base, because it's double Therium, or double Luminite, excuse me, that can be something if you're trying to get back into this game. And if you are playing as Luminite heavy as he is now, I like that Infest on the backline, trying to trap him in. Fiends are going to go on top of everything. I don't know how I believe about this one. There are so many Lancers on the front line, but Fiends trying to get on the backline here. Exos, they kind of weigh so incredibly well. And yes, there's this one Hellborn adding this damage, but the creeps are fighting too. This was a... It's funny, I'm looking at this, and the supply tells one story. Jardozer's supply is good. On the other hand, I look at the fight, and like, this was so bad for him. Not worth it at all.
It's crazy because it should have been good. Just look at the health bars of the Exos, though. So many of them got away. That panic rush, I don't think he was even attacking half the time, so he didn't have the quick draw hustle to run back south around the camp and disengage as quickly as he would like. And Jardozer, it was almost a succulent timing, right? The split on all the brutes to just create fiends is also, I think, what led to a very disruptive and deceptive supply count there. But it comes at a cost. And now with this retreat, if he heals the whole army up, we're getting it again. We can already see the command upgrade is on the way. High command's coming in. It's an even more aggressive timing this time around into the Helicarriers.
I think it's important to point out, though, this is only 2-base Helicarrier. It's not 3-base Helicarrier. It's on 1 Therium patch, not 2, not 3. So, yes, there's a 3rd base on the way now. But the point here is getting these Helicarriers out is going to be extremely Therium expensive. Extremely Therium expensive for Primescout. He's not going to have as many of them. He's not going to have as many bombers as quickly. He's not going to have as much supporting army for this. It really is going to be about these Helicarriers going into this fight. And that can absolutely work 100% because, well, Jardozer's also a little bit lacking on the Therium economy. He only has this, he's got the 2, certainly, but the mining time is a little bit longer. He's not double shrining it. And there's, yes, you can go and take this double Therium on the right side. That's pretty hard. So, yeah. Yes, this is all true, but it is still something to consider. Yeah.
I'm going to booty talk, though. But that's the booty talk. We have Hellborn spam, right? Like, if you actually look at the army Jardozer has, it's not actually good at taking down Helicarriers whatsoever. And he's not really setting up static defenses to help him with that. Like, going double Luminite base, you know, that doesn't get you into good affordability to spam out anti-air either. Like, I actually think even on just, you know, a 2-base, delayed 3-base, these Helicarriers are going to slap pretty hard.
Can Jardozer catch him on a timing? Like, that's the really important question right now.
What, with his hand in the cookie jar?
Yeah, Jardozer's army is really strong right now. It's got a bunch of Hellborn. He's got these upgrades. He's got all these brutes. The supply is nice. And a lot of money committing into these hangar bays, right? Committing into these Helicarriers that are not on the field. And you still got to build bombers to make them super useful anyways. Can he go and, say, break the 3rd base here? And this is so cool. Just the skull here, just giving high ground vision is awesome. But can he go and force a fight before things are ready? Now, I mean, this is still a lot of Exos and Medtechs.
I think the problem here is Jardozer's got everything in one location. Had he known the army was situated on the south side, you send everything in, you delete the command post and leave, right? But this slow approach is because he's playing kind of blind compared to what we can see. And it buys time now for the Helicarriers to start coming out. Of course, not in their final form. Bombers do need to be produced. But if he just wants to continue this slow approach of Hellborn spamming and sniping out buildings, it does mean the Helicarrier comp is going to get online.
Yeah, that's I think that's a fair shout. So 4th base now done. It's not mining. We're sitting here. And Jardozer has to take this. Oh, I hate this position now against Helicarriers. It's like going against Atlases or something. You have to hold this low ground because this is all your Therium economy. 17 workers here mining out of this double Luminite setup. You have to hold on to it in some way. Maybe you take the high ground and fight around it, but you don't want to give this position up. And it's also so choked out that a bunch of bombing runs would be painful, to say the least.
I mean, he's lined it up perfectly as well to get hit from the north side, right? Like, it is just a line full of Hellhogs and Imps. So if he just finds that, just sends the Scud in, instead he's going to leave the bio. A little bit of poke coming out. Backstab is on the way now, though. Jardozer needed a few more seconds. Looked like a glimpse came in there. Primescout saw what he was up to.
I mean, if you dive in against that, you're just going to lose everything. So now Shadow Flyers, they're almost all going to get targeted down. That was not a good fight. Shadow Flyers, yeah, they are not the most expensive thing ever at 25 Therium apiece, but they are still expensive. They are still something that you care a lot about. Now the bombing run, they're all trapped into a corner. How bad does this one hit? Oh, it's so bad. It hurts so much. And now these 7 Hellborn, almost 2,000 Therium in this army. Oh, there's only 4 of them, 5 of them remaining. A lot of them did go down, but as you hold the high ground here, as they do retreat, the Brutes on the front line, tanking the Hellborn, shooting from the back line. Yes, we do have these Helicarriers on top, and they're just going to target all the Hellborn down. Can they fight the army on the ground before that happens? The answer is absolutely not. This is just not going to work out here.
I think this is fine right now. The Helicarriers, the promotion comes through as well. The Hellborns are getting sniped down. The front line has failed him. Primescout breaks Jardozer's back here. And that was crazy. That was with a 50-50 split. He sent the bomber on north and south. He didn't have anything fixed on just one location. And yet still, he comes out so strong to make it a 2-0 win for the Vanguard.